welcome back to Life Changing Solutions Live. I'm Angie Amico, and today, like I mentioned, I'm just so excited. And my friend Aubrey over here, she's like, "You're just gonna get a whole bunch of spirit today." Spirit. So, thank you so much, Aubrey, for being here.
Oh my God, thanks for having me.
Actually, first, I gotta introduce you. This woman right here, for me, she's been a total inspiration, super empowering, and just somebody that I can always call upon, and that friendly, non-judgmental listening ear. So thank you so much for all the support that you've given me. And you know so much. We joke about it, but you really are know-it-all.
I tend to study a lot, yeah.
And that's part of what makes you so great when it comes to being a transformational trainer, which is how we met in that arena as far as being, but you're so much more than that. Your background is beyond the coaching, practice. It's like you have a very in-depth, education, really, whether it's been through life experiences or even self-studies, or you're with masters, right? You also mentor with masters. So she's legit. That's all I'm saying.
I'm studying right now with a Buddhist monk. He's been a monk for over 50 years. He's a master teacher, and it's just amazing. So I always try to find that kind of place to wrap all my brain around, because it's I always have questions. When you're 2 years old, it's why? I never stopped asking why,
That's
ever.
Awesome.
And that's taken me down a road of studying neuroscience and quantum physics and religion and theology and transformational trainings and hypnosis and subconscious, and strangely enough, it all, as Beth said, spirit. It's all come back to spirit, where I started off from 20 years ago. And it feels good to be back.
That's awesome.
Feels good to be back.
And I think that's what is so awesome about the work that you do and what you provide, your trainings, and even working with you, is that you take from everything. And right now, as you mentioned, spirit is what's really guiding you, but you're still pulling from all these different schools of thoughts or studies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all interconnected, and we're all, there's this idea that, if you've ever heard anybody in spirit talk about emptiness, right? It's we're empty of... This idea of emptiness means that we just simply don't have an inherent existence of our own, right? It's interdependent, and we're all interdependent. I mean, if it wasn't for oxygen, none of us would be here, if you think about it. So we're pretty dependent on certain things. And all persons are interdependent, and phenomenon are also interdependent. And the reason I'm bringing this up, I want to start with this, because otherwise you're going to listen to all this and be like, but have no reason to put it in your life. What I'm about to talk about, if you want peace in your life, if you want to have better relationships, if you want to make your life everything that you've always thought it could be and want it to be, this is a place to start to look. And don't accept what I say just because I'm saying it. This is something you get to contemplate. This is something that you get to analyze. All right? One of the great things about Buddhism is that it is always debated, and even the masters debate other masters in search for truth, which is what I'm going to talk about today, truth. So, you probably remember, and I remember, and maybe some of the younger people don't, remember those pictures that were like a digital picture, and you had to stare at it a certain way, and then the dinosaur came out from it, like the 3D dinosaur. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? So think of that like truth, okay? If you look at this picture, you see a picture that's just like a digital representation, right? And some people go, oh, picture, and that's their truth, because they can't see. And then somebody else, a master or somebody who studies, will go and see past the picture, and the dinosaur comes out, right? And they go, oh, dinosaur. Now, for the person that can't see the dinosaur, the person thinks that other person's crazy, right? It's like, what are you talking about? It's just a digital picture. It's like, well, no, there's a dinosaur. So our truth is pretty much just like that as well. We just respond and react to the world, okay? And we do so, as Beth said, 90% of everything that we do is subconscious, all right? Which is all our past emotions, traumas, actions, reactions, thoughts, feelings, everything like that. When you start processing this idea of this interdependency on truth, it's not saying that you don't exist, because you're right here. I can touch you. And I can touch me, right? You exist, but you don't exist the way that most people see. Okay? The world, just the painting doesn't exist as most people see. Most people will go by and just see this digital painting and go, oh, well, that's it. That's the painting. And if you believe that that's just the painting, and then somebody comes along and goes, oh, do you see the dinosaur? You go, you're freaking crazy, right? If somehow you could put that in the head that the picture is not the picture, okay, pretty soon we start superimposing that truth on other things. So, imagine this. Your entire world is like wearing a pair of glasses with your beliefs etched in the lens of the glass. So anything that you look at, you're seeing through, you're superimposing your belief onto it.
Okay.
And so, just as the picture isn't the picture, we start seeing the truth and we go, well, that's the truth. But it's not. Okay? And the whole reason why this is so important in figuring out is this is where all the negative emotions come from. This is where anger comes from. This is where fear comes from. Jealousy comes from. Rage comes from. All these sadness comes from. That deep, painful feeling inside come from. She was talking about victim earlier, right?
I was going to say.
In that stage of being a victim, that's where all this comes from, right? If you see, oh, I am a victim. I am, and I create this as my truth, and I am a victim, rather than there was an incident that happened, which takes all the emotion out of it, which is hard for most people, right? It's understandable.
Right. So, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
So, like, again, using that metaphor, right, or of the glasses. So, and combining what Yamil said. So, I'm walking around with my victim glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everything I see is going to be viewed from the victim standpoint.
Sure.
So why doesn't that boy like me? Oh, it's because of what happened.
Yeah.
They must know. They see, right? So.
Or even on the vice versa, I say, hey, how are you today? And it becomes, oh, well, that person's being aggressive, right? It could be just that way as well. It could be any combination of those things instead of somebody said words.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so, because the brain has to understand something. And imagine if the brain didn't understand things, like there'd be chaos, right? It would be fear-driven. In fact, when you look at fear and violence against like LGBT and things like that, a lot of that comes from not understanding. The brain doesn't understand it, so these emotions, this fight or flight starts coming out, and some people will act out and fight it rather than flee it because there's chaos. And so we tend to group things as we think we know it. So we had a lot of snow this year in Vegas, and up in Mount Charleston, like 240 inches this year.
Oh, wow.
It's great skiing. Anyway, so snow falls and you go, wow, snow. And then you take a handful of it and you mash it up and you go, wow, snowball. Now suddenly the snowball is separate from the snow, right? And then you go, this is a beautiful creation. I'm going to bring it inside and put it in a frame. And it melts. And you go, wow, water. Well, wait, what is it? Is it water? Is it snowball or is it snow? And even if you go, well, it's all water, well, water's not water. It's 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, right? And so this is this interdependency, but we see things as the snowball is something. The snow is something else, okay? The water is something else, but it's all this interdependency. And when that comes down to us, as Beth also said, the I and the mind, this is where we start destroying ourselves, each other, the world, relationships, arguments, things like that, because the I and the mind becomes prevalent, as if we're separate from, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm the snowball, you're the snow now. You know, we're separate. It's like, no, right? And if you start just even getting this idea, what happens is your world is your world, and the world is the world. And where those two intersect, people consider it consequence and circumstance. From that, we react from our beliefs and their circumstance. React, belief, circumstance. React, belief, circumstance. And we always act out of our beliefs. Mm-hmm. So that is what we see with our glasses. We're superimposing our beliefs on everything, and we're calling it the truth.
It's funny, if I may, like, something that I teach is what shapes reality. And so I'll just go very briefly. I start off with the beliefs. Most people think, oh, what's happening right now? It's like, no, it's the belief. The belief then triggers the thought. The thought triggers the emotion, which then becomes our reality. The example that I use is, have you ever thought that your spouse or partner is cheating on you? And most people are like, yeah, have you ever had that hint of jealousy or whatever? In that moment, they might as well be cheating on you because it's real. In that moment, you're believing that it's real, so you're experiencing your partner cheating on you just because you thought that, they hid the phone or whatever it may come from. But in that brief moment, it became real. Right, later you may find out, oh no, it wasn't true, it was just a misunderstanding. But in that very moment, your reality was that your partner was cheating on you. And it's based from that whole belief, thought, emotion, reaction.
Right. We have these horrible, horrible things inside our bodies called brains. and they're great in so many ways, and they're awful in the same. And if you look at things, so like we have our senses, right? Sight, smell, touch, taste, feel. But our senses don't sense reality directly, right? They don't do anything by themselves. Our brain has to process that, okay? So now our consciousness is quote unquote experiencing reality, but it also doesn't experience reality directly, right? So we're not directly experiencing any of these things. When you start looking at where do I come from in the realm of my thoughts, feelings, sensations, ideas, beliefs, and consciousness, that shapes what we call conventional truth, meaning that like you exist, but you don't exist the way we think you exist. I exist, microphone exists, camera exists, but we're only processing that through our senses, our brain, and our consciousness, right?
And if I may, sorry, just something that came up, and I know you'll tie it in. It just came up like something as simple as our nose. Our brains are so brilliant, but sometimes what it does is that if it's done processing what it needs to process, you can no longer see it. Your nose, actually, your eyes can see your nose at all times, but your brain no longer processes it, so like it's almost as if you don't see it. So that's how sometimes our beliefs work, right? Like,
and we're blind 2.5 hours out of every day, okay? Because what happens is when you turn your eyes from side to side, you don't see. Your brain is actually filling in the narrative based on what you've already seen. Okay, so when you turn your eyes from side to side at any particular time, you actually don't see during that moment. You perceive to see, but 2.5 hours of the day you're blind. And that's an actual neuroscience and the way that the eyes are. And yet we perceive it as, no, that's not true. Right? And our brain fills in the narrative, which is like when you go back to the cheating spouse. Our brains fill in the narrative. Now here's the thing about the brains. If it's agreeable to us, in our thoughts and ideas, as if this truth is agreeable to us, then we have happy emotions and things like that. It's agreeable. If it's disagreeable to the mind, that's when all the bad stuff happens, right? And this is where the magic happens, especially like if you're in a relationship and you're arguing with your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend or cat, I don't know, whatever. And enough about me. So, when you're saying like, well, you did this and it's disagreeable, so now I can make whatever this is something, and I can make that something the truth, right? And then I can make that truth so imperative and important when none of that's actually happening, right? Words were said. And as words were said, we can even break that down as to, we didn't hear the words directly. We didn't process the words directly. It's still interdependent. And when we can start seeing this shapes creation. This is ultimately what it's creation. When we start seeing the emptiness in things, the interdependence in things, then we can start kind of backing off and saying, well, what do I really want to see right now? And if I believe in myself and I believe in my ability to create actions that I want to create, hold boundaries, whatever it is, then how do I create what I want and not be reactive, right? Because, again, if something's disagreeable, I personally am disagreeable to a lot of people, right? And here's the really cool thing. I'm also agreeable to a lot of people. So how do I exist as agreeable and disagreeable at the same time? It negates itself, right? It can't stand. It's kind of like this room temperature. You could say, oh, I'm a little cold. And I could say, well, I'm a little warm. And somebody else could go, oh, I actually feel pretty good. So how could it exist in 3 different realities? It doesn't. None of that's real, right? And when you start really breaking this down, you'll start seeing how, well, you're right and I'm wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. That it's impossible. It's impossible to be both things at the same time. So that's what we talk about the emptiness of, right? And then from the emptiness of, you can say, well, what do I want to create? What are we doing here? And how do we achieve what I want? Or what I want to create, compassion, desire. And this is how we could create compassion for all the beings. So years ago, and I'll admit, I did get away from this for a little bit, not in the way that it's about to sound like, but years ago I took a vow that I am here to relieve the suffering of all beings. Okay? It's a bodhisattva vow. And the number one thing about that is compassion. And to really have compassion is you have to be able to start separating this idea of, oh, that painting, that picture is just a picture, or, oh, that picture is the dinosaur. Now here's the thing. A lot of people will go through life never seeing the dinosaur. Why would you get mad at them for not seeing the dinosaur?
Because they need to.
Well, but they don't.
But I needed them to see
right?
it because then I need that validation.
But think about, but if you know the dinosaur is there, then you can see the delusion that the person is suffering who doesn't see the truth. And compassion forms. Because it's no more about, well, how can you say there's a dinosaur there? You're freaking crazy, blah, 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 there's no dinosaur there. And you can simply look at that person and say, okay. And know that the enemy of all of us is the delusion, not the person who's wielding it and they don't even know they're wielding it. Right? And when you start looking at the world that way, that's where compassion flows. Because ultimately, this truth, this ultimate truth, which is conceptual in nature, withstands analysis, whereas everything else doesn't, like the snowball, the water, the hydrogen, the oxygen, things like that. When you start looking at that, the snowball no longer exists because we can see by analysis that it's a combination of all these different things. It's not actually, we just call it snow. That's the truth for us, but it's not. And even that is based on atmospheric pressure and conditions and this and that and the other, which is dependent on even other things, which is dependent on even other things. And so that mindfulness, it's just about being aware that how you're seeing things right now isn't really the way it is. And until you consciously choose to analyze and contemplate, like through deep meditation, and start seeing these separations. Because I'll tell you, my meditations are great. And all this makes sense to me when I'm talking about it, and all this makes sense to me when I'm in meditation. And then I'll go and get in my car and somebody will cut me off. I'm like, and I laugh at myself. I'm like, right, there you go. Like, suddenly the interdependentness is gone, and it's like, you cut me off. I wanted to, and it's the me and the mine and the I again, right? And it's always, I'm being wronged. Something's happening to me. This is happening to me. You and I are arguing. You're doing this to me. I want this. I want that. I want it to be this way, and when I don't have it, it's pain. And ultimately, that's what this all boils down to, is stepping back from it to see what's truly, I want to say what's truly happening, but it's really what's truly is not happening. And then saying, where do I go from here? And why would you get upset at somebody who didn't see the dinosaur? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolute. And thank you, because you just really did blow at least my mind. And I can see Yamil over here in the corner of my eye. She's like, ooh, yeah. But no, this is awesome. And is there a way that you can, for those that really don't study or really understand like all these big words kind of thing, is there a way that you can break it down in like 2 minutes?
Yeah. So I was thinking of this joke on the way here about how I was going to tell a story about my past. And I'm like, ultimately every moment up until now is my whole life happened before I got here.
Right.
You know, which is, now in that whole life, I have had thoughts, feelings, emotions, actions, reactions. I've been hurt, I've been blessed, I've been happy, I've been sad, I've been all these different things, and all that is stored subconsciously. If you're not aware that you have created your own belief structure around nearly everything, that we react out of habit, okay, no matter what. If something's going on right now in front of you and you're having a reaction to it, it's not about what's going on in front of you right now. It's about something that's happened that's similar and a reaction that was similar, which is why you're having the same type of reaction that you would always do, just as if somebody cuts me off in the car. I always joke around it. Traffic is preventing me from reaching enlightenment. It's the only thing that's left. But if you can see that for a moment and just contemplate that for a second and say, okay, is it possible that what's happening right now in front of me isn't the way that I see it? And can I think about that for a while? Mm-hmm. And then what do I choose to do? I don't believe that angry people feel good about being angry. It's a horrible feeling to have in your stomach. If they want to get rid of it by lashing out at their arguments or whatever, but if you're angry, that afflictive emotion is so destroying. If you can just take a step back for a second and say, what if it's not the way that I think it is?
And I've given, it's really about perception too. That's a way, I've asked this question when I did anger management classes and taught that, when you get cut off, what if that person has their literal dying child in the back seat and they're just rushing to the hospital? It's like, have you considered that? What if something else is going on, or what if that cutoff prevented you from getting into a greater accident, further along the road? And those are things that we don't stop to consider because we are so stuck in the I and the my. And but also the other thing to think about is, for everybody listening, all of what you're saying for me is what I call it, through awareness comes change. I jokingly say, my joke is, I am a hand hogger. I know this, and I don't care. But I also have the control to stop. Why? Because I'm fully aware of this behavior. And if I choose to change it, I can. But then there's times where I don't. And so with you, what you're explaining is, at least the way that I took away, is not only that are we all connected, and there's always more going on than what we think is going on, but to also consider that we have the power to change and choose our behavior and no longer react automatically as we normally do when somebody cuts us off, but to be able to say, hey, not today, even if it's that starting point, not today.
Yeah. It starts with a pattern interrupt, really. And one of the things that I teach people about pattern interrupts is to do anything that changes the pattern. So if somebody cuts me off, I could clap my hands 3 times. It's just enough to interrupt that connective brain neural pathway that always connects cutting off with the past experience. If it interrupts it for a second, now I can reroute it to what I want it to do. And that's a way to do it, because most of life is coming from I and mine. And we want something. And want is the cause of all your pain, all your suffering, everything, if you don't have it or if you lose it. Okay? And I lost everything in the last 2 years after a brain injury. I got face to face with losing everything that I built up, my business, my status, whatever you want to call it, lost everything. And it was such an awareness to get back to spirit of, wow, these were things that I hold as important. And then it became about, wow, I just get to make it through the day, right? And so if you can not want as a goal, but we're talking about, oh, I really want that, and for every minute that you don't have that, it creates pain. Or I really want this fight to be over, or I want to prove my point, and I'm not, then it causes more anger and more frustration and that ego. And the funny thing is, I and mine, even though it looks the same, are 2 different entities. And those could even be broken down to realize that those are empty of its own existence as well. And so if you start going, what about me wants this? What about me feels this? What about, and then whatever you answer that question with, ask it again. Okay, what about me didn't want to get cut off? Well, I just, I want to drive. Okay, well, what about me wants to drive a certain way? Well, because I want to, what about, and it comes down, if I kept going down, it would be, I want to be in control. And in that moment, I felt out of control. And who wants to feel out of control? Like nobody, right? And then I go, well, that's really silly that I got all upset to try to be in control over something. There's billions of cars on the road. Like, how am I going to control all that? The only thing I can control is if I awareness and then choose to act. And could I choose to act peacefully? Could I choose to look at the person with compassion and go, I hope you're okay. If you keep driving like that, you might get into an accident. Somebody's going to, miss you if you're gone. Like, it's a totally different dialogue. And this, you can do this in anything: relationships, job, money, sex, like whatever it is for you. But you have to stop seeing it as this is it. And one of the worst problems is we'll call a friend who will be like, can you believe this just happened? I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. You're right and they're wrong. And now it just feeds the ego. And you're like, you're right, I am right. And I'm gonna, it's all fake. It's fake, So, and I mean, I could go on and on. Like I said,
I know, it's like these topics are so fascinating. I'm holding it back a question.
How much time do we have?
We have like 2 more minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to ask this question with the intention for you not to answer, but more so to tease the audience, because I hear you say the I, the mind, the separation, but yet the togetherness and all this. However, in personal development, we hear, or even in therapy in some cases, the I am, right, is very empowering. The I am, it's like those I am statements, and shifting from I am a victim to I am powerful, I am resilient. But then we have you saying there is no I.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear what you guys think and what, that contrast is, or what that means to you, and get some of your input. And this was a very brief snippet of all of Aubrey's brain thoughts. And you have some trainings coming up, correct?
I do. Yes, I do. I have there's a whole 3-part training about all of this that goes really, really deep into reconnecting with spirit. It's designed to get you out of basically, when we fully deconstruct self and fully and truly comprehend who we are, then anything is possible. That's the cool thing. But it takes time to do that. And yes, I do study transformational ideologies, and there are conflicts there. So I try to reduce that as far down as I can. The other thing that I've got going on, which I wanted to say, is I'm doing a group coaching program. I don't normally do that. And I'm looking for a minimum of 10 people at a very, very reasonable rate. To basically, it's going to be 4 trainings a month and 4 private calls a month, to not only break this down for you, but to also show how that goes into your life and create really cool results wherever you want those results in there. And it's a 4-month program, and it's designed to give a lot of content, a lot of training, and a lot of one-on-one time, because it's necessary to ask your own questions and break things down. So either one of those you can do.
And so is this direct access to you?
Yes.
Are you saying so?
To me, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, that's super cool. And do you have any pricing, or do you want to this is your chance to shout this out?
Yeah, so the group coaching program is $350 a month.
That's it?
And yeah, I know. Well, how much I usually charge for. I usually charge about $250 an hour to coach. So for
that's
for about an hour and a half of my time, you get 4 calls, one weekly call, and then 4 trainings for 4 months, $350 a month, and then if you want to go on and do the workshop, which you will, that comes off the price of it, and the first part is $700. So my thing after my accident, my brain injury, was all getting back to finding affordable ways to reach people, so this information isn't out of reach, and I also get to buy food for myself. So it's an exchange, it's an energetic exchange.
You're so spoiled with shelter and food and stuff.
And clothing, jeez.
Right. But how can we find you?
I'm right here.
Right. Well,
I'm right
no.
next to you.
I know. For reals, though?
Oh, okay.
Right,
so 2 ways. The easiest way, email me, contact contact@aubreyhaas.com, and that last name is H, 2 A's, 1 S, 1 E, not 2 S's. Don't do that, won't get to me. So contact@aubreyhaas.com. Easier ways, call me 619-431-3169. That rings directly to me, not through an assistant or anything. 619-431-3169. Is that what I said? I think that's
so.
my phone number. And if it's not, then email me at contact@aubreyhaas.com. And I promise I personally will get back to you.
And also, we'll make sure to have all of her information on the comments and all the links that you'll see later. Thank you again so much for being here. I love having these types of conversations and inviting everybody to share in that. So please don't forget to like, share, comment, and actually, wow, that was the whole hour. We are done. I am out of here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And hi, Michael. Bye. Everybody, it's Angie Amico from Life Changing Solutions. I decided to make this video because I have a training coming out, and it's a little different. Most people are used to me